Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, you are now listening to the greatest of the greatest, the best of the best, and his name is Josh Samuel. And on the line, ladies and gentlemen, are two of the greatest versions of themselves, and their names are Fran from Earth One and Jordan Ross from Earth One. Fran from Earth One, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, as always.
Good, good. Brother Jordan from Earth One, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good, good, good. Now, today, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be something a little different from the videos we made in the past. For today, we are going to talk about Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, or Rise of Palpatine, if for those of you that have seen it. And we're going to talk about it. Brother Fran, man, I'll start with you. Shit. Talk to me about your experience with first The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and to now with The Rise of Skywalker, man.
Okay, so I've never really been a big fan of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big fan of superhero movies, but I've never really got into Star Wars. And I went to see The Force Awakens on 2015 with my parents and my brother, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it. I mean, your typical action movie. So I was like, okay, this is cool. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to see The Last Jedi with my brother, who wasn't in town. He was studying abroad. So we were like, oh, let's go to the movies together. And we went to see The Last Jedi. And I think that next to Captain Marvel is one of the most boring films I've ever seen.
Damn.
I mean, I'm sorry if you like it, that's fine, but I was in the cinema all the time taking my watch,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, 40 minutes left, okay, 35 minutes left, okay, 30 minutes left. Like, the cinematography was great, the action was okay, but the whole film was so boring. Like, I was so bored in the theater that has only happened to me with Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, I think. So I'm sorry, I hate that movie. I must say that I've been planning to watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Because, hey, if I watch it again and I'm wrong, I will eat my words. I have no problem with that. So then I saw the trailers for Rise of Skywalker and I was like, whatever. And I went to the theater to see it the first day with some friends. And I must say that it is more entertaining than The Last Jedi, but it is so bad. Like, the script and the things that happen in the movie, I mean, the VFX, they are great, the cinematography is great, whatever, but the decisions made in the film, they are so bad. Like, I was in the theater, like, not literally racing, but raising my hands up, like, what is going on? Like, when Rey and Ben kissed, I literally spoke out like, what is going on, or something like that. Like, what is this? And everyone around me was like, oh yeah, come on. And I was looking around like, how can you like this? Like, what is going on?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I will talk about it more in depth now, but first impression, I went and watched it again. I've watched it 2 times. Same mistakes, same bad things, so I didn't like it.
Got you. Brother Jordan, man, talk to me about your experience with the sequel trilogy, starting with The Force Awakens, man.
I guess unlike Fran, I am a huge Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved those movies since, I was super little. Phantom Menace was one of the first movies I saw in theaters. I love it all. I love Star Wars. I have this thing I say where I'm like, to me, there's no bad Star Wars. Star Wars is like pizza. You know, if you like pizza, it's like all good pizzas. It's still pizza, even if it's bad pizza. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll talk about my most recent experiences with the sequel trilogy, because I've been really up and down, and my rankings always fluctuate. constantly on all Star Wars movies in general. But before I saw Rise of Skywalker, me and a buddy, we marathoned them all like back to back in a 24-hour period, pretty much. And I remembered liking Force Awakens fine. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I remembered liking it fine, and I don't want to insult the work of anybody who worked on it or anything, but I guess what I'll say is rewatching it in that marathon, Force Awakens didn't really do it for me as it did when I first saw it. The film is very... Now, this could be a good thing for some people. Some people might like this, but the film is very much in love with Star Wars. It treats the source material, it treats A New Hope with an incredible amount of reverence and just worship and appreciation and honestly nostalgia. Yeah. Every time there's a callback to the original film, they make a big moment out of it, and it as if they're saying, "Hey, look, remember this from the original that you loved." And it feels like it was made by a guy who hates the prequels and really loves A New Hope specifically. And so watching episodes 1 through 6 and then going straight into 7, it felt very jarring. Again, I'm not going to say good or bad, but it definitely felt jarring, and I didn't enjoy it as much this time seeing it. And so that was kind of me most recently with Force Awakens. And I think probably the best way to watch that movie, if I'm honest, is probably not marathon it. It's probably best to like watch the other ones, wait a few days, wait a week or two, and then watch Force Awakens, because that way it's not as jarring. Rise of Skywalker, or I'm sorry, episode 8. Okay, Last Jedi. I had a similar experience with Fran. The first time I saw it, I felt kind of bored. And I had only seen it twice in theaters. And then when I rewatched it recently, I actually really, really loved it. And I can totally see where, like, if you're not a Star Wars fan, if you're not into that world and that mythos and universe, you're just going to check out. And it doesn't feel like the movie is trying to make it accessible to people who aren't already fans of the universe, if that makes sense. So if you're not inherently into it, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But if you marathon them all and you're a huge fan of all those movies, I think it adds some really interesting things to the Force and the mythology of it all, and it kind of feels very it expanded the universe in a way that was interesting to me, in a way that I felt was lacking in Force Awakens, and I really loved it when I resaw it. I think it's probably one of my, in the upper half of my rankings of the Star Wars movies. And then with Rise of Skywalker, I loved it when I saw it the first time. I've seen it a few times. I still really enjoy it. There are some... I'm feeling it feels not... It's not the same thing, but it's feeling vaguely similar to Justice League, because ever since Rise of Skywalker came out, we've been hearing reports of, like, lots of meddling, earlier versions of the script, what was changed, what wasn't, all that kind of stuff. So, the most recent times I've seen it, I've kind of been, like, more aware of that and trying to pick out what seemed to be mandated, what seemed to be kind of originally intended or not. And I still enjoy it. I think for me, what works the best in all the movies, all the sequels, is the Rey and Kylo stuff for me. Not necessarily their relationship romantically, but just their character arcs and
their chemistry.
Their chemistry, their Force connection. That to me was really interesting. So all that stuff in Rise of Skywalker, I love how Rey's journey with the Force in that movie. I like how that went. I'm not so huge into, like, I've also said this before. There's been like 8 different Star Wars movies where the political landscape is the exact same thing it's the Rebels versus the Galactic Empire, the evil bad guys. And we've had 8 movies of that. So I wasn't so keen on seeing that again. But, you know, for a battle sequence, I thought it was really well done and really, you know, fun. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it quite a bit. What did you think, Josh?
In terms of Rise of Skywalker, or my experience with the sequel trilogy, or both? Hello?
Or probably the whole saga, right?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the sequel trilogy. Yeah, I remember seeing The Force Awakens just like yesterday. Packed theater, was really excited to see the universe come back into existence with The Force Awakens. I know people are split on J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker. I know I see some people say he tends to take things safe. Going back to like the Star Trek films he did, for example, I know people said that he just copies and pastes things that have already been done, and I can agree. You know, there is some truth to that. But I think I like a lot of his films, so I was really excited to see what he did with The Force Awakens. The theater I was in was packed. I was kind of tripping out and scared because there was this guy who continuously walked around with this weird Riddler, I kid you not, Riddler looking suit on. So I was getting kind of worried that something was about to happen. But overall, I really enjoy it. It's still personally one of my favorite Star Wars films. I really liked Kylo. I had really big hopes for Finn as a character and his arc going forward, and I really was intrigued at the time by Rey. I didn't necessarily like how easy things came for her, so to speak, but I was really intrigued by her character, and I liked Daisy Ridley's performance in spite of those cons I had in terms of her character. Going to the last Jedi, same situation, packed theater. I look at it as more of a movie that has its moments. I haven't seen it recently. I'm not trying to knock Rian Johnson or anything. I really like Knives Out. I look at it as a movie that had some moments that I really enjoyed, some moments that I love, and some performances that I love. I think Mark Hamill, in spite of the way they took his character, I think his performance was good. Adam Driver is just, what more needs to be said? He's amazing. Daisy Ridley was good. I didn't really like Rose that much, but that's not the actress's fault. She just got paid to play a character in a movie, but I didn't really like her character. Visually, it looks gorgeous. I think it's one of the best looking Star Wars films out there. What else? And yeah, man, just with The Last Jedi, it's a bunch of moments, and some are good, some are really fucking good, like the whole, scene with Kylo and Rey taking on those guards. And some moments are just unbelievably confusing, like Luke Skywalker drinking titty milk. So I look at The Last Jedi as a moments movie. The Rise of Skywalker, yeah. I was excited when they said J.J. Abrams will come back. People in the comment section will be like, "Oh, you're not a fan," but I was excited to see him come back. I know Colin is it Trevorrow, brother Jordan?
Yeah, I think Trevorrow.
Yeah, he was supposed to initially helm the film, and given the movies of his I've seen, I wasn't too keen on that. However, seeing some of the more recent concept art that and story arcs that were confirmed to be a part of what he was trying to do, I am, and having seen Rise of Skywalker, I am kind of, mixed on how I feel about the movie now, because I do think I would like to see what Colin had intended now that I've seen Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker I don't think is bad. Again, the actresses really bring it home. Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, in spite of him being "Where's My White Woman" the entire movie. You know, seeing the callbacks, the references, that scene where you hear Ahsoka, Anakin, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon, and all the others, that was really, really, really cool. I would have liked to have seen like them maybe appear as like in their body like a Force ghost or something like that, but we can't have it all, I guess. And some stuff, again, it's like there's moments where it really hits it home, and there's other moments I was like, it's either they were just reacting to what was said about The Last Jedi, or it, maybe J.J. Abrams just thought this was a good idea, and, I'm wrong. So, yeah, I don't think Rise of Skywalker is terrible, but it's safe. It's not as risky as The Last Jedi, and it's not as bold as some Star Wars films of the past, in my opinion. It feels more reactionary, if that makes sense, if anything. And yeah, Rey Palpatine Skywalker with the yellow lightsaber. Whew.
I mean, yeah, what you just said, like, I think that they didn't even know where to take the new trilogy. So they just made the first one. They tried to subvert the expectations with the second one. Most of the people hated it.
Mm-hmm.
So just exactly in the middle of the trilogy, they tried to course correct,
mm-hmm.
and then tried to take it back to the direction that they were with the first one. But in the first one, they didn't have a clear direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's like a mix of things of they didn't know where to go, and when they went somewhere, people hated it. So in the last one, they needed to change the direction, but they didn't even know to which direction to take it. I think that's like the whole feeling of the trilogy of they don't know what they want to speak out. They don't know what to say. Basically, it's like movies without any meaning. Like in the first trilogy, learn about the Force and know how to control the dark side and redemption and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in the sequel trilogy, it's like, I'm going to bash out everything that you know, but then I'm going to restore it because you didn't like it, and then I'm going to give you fan service, but by giving you fan service, some people are not going to like it either, so we don't know what the fuck we're talking or doing here.
Yeah, I feel that, man. And Brother Jordan, of course, I'm gonna let you chime in. I think for me, what really, like I hinted at earlier, what really elevates the movies is the performances. As I keep on saying, like Adam Driver, I love that man as Kylo. I know people say he's a emo punk ass bitch, but I love Kylo Ren. I love his story, and I just if anyone asks me a positive about the sequel trilogy that I will defend, it will definitely be Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. I don't necessarily agree with the whole Reylo or Rey and Kylo suddenly falling in love with each other, but I guess we can talk about that later.
That was so bad,
brother.
So bad.
Jordan, man,
I'm sorry.
What's your thought on Adam Driver, man?
He's probably the best part of the sequel trilogy. I mean, it's hard. I think he and Daisy Ridley, they give the best performances.
Mm-hmm.
They're when you watch, the episodes 1 through 6, and then the sequel trilogy.
Uh-huh.
He totally feels like very much in line with that Anakin Skywalker. You can see like the similarities between him and his grandfather, and that's great.
Right.
And he just brings it in everything he's in. I don't think I've ever seen him give a bad performance in anything.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think Adam Driver, he said that he knew where his character was going to end up in the third movie,
mm-hmm.
but I'm curious if that changed a whole bunch, or like what exactly he thought it was going to be. Like if he knew that he was going to turn to the light side eventually, if he knew that like or if he just kind of knew vague kind of outlines and that kind of thing. So I'd be curious to see what he was working with, because he's been working on this role for like since 2014, 2013, whenever the movie came out. He's been working on the role for a long time, and I'd be curious to know what exactly he knew was going to happen.
Right. Brother Fran, man, what did you think about Adam Driver as Kylo Ren, aka who the internet refers to as the emo punk bitch?
The guy from Marriage Story. That one.
Yeah. That can act.
Yeah. Hey, a little apart. I saw Marriage Story like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I loved it. Yeah. I don't know why people hate it. I mean, I cried with the fucking ending, okay?
Yeah.
I cry with movies, and I cried with the ending. It was really good. So, yeah, anyways, I mean, I'm not going to say that he carries the 3 movies in his back, but he's one of the ones who, I mean, at least he tries, He's something new. It's not Darth Vader, something new. He acts very well. I think that he suits the role.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think he's great in them. I mean, I don't know. It was because this is the same thing that we talked about earlier of the changing directions. Like, he uses the mask and he's an apprentice, and then Snoke tells him that he looks like a little boy, so he takes it off and breaks it. And then in the third one, we're going to rebuild it because people hated it, because people loved the mask, so we're going to rebuild it. So it was like, okay, like, what are they doing with the character? I don't know. I think that he did great with what he had, basically. That's all I can say.
Got you. Yeah, I really, like I said, I'm over here gushing like it's Henry Cavill, but yeah, I really, really, really love Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. He's just really, 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 really good, man. And if anybody asks me about the sequel trilogy, I will always, with a smile on my face, mention, have you heard the tale or the tragedy of Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo? Moving on, brothers, let me ask y'all this, man. And I know this is gonna ruffle some feathers, and Brother Jordan, man, I'll start with you. Do you think that, like the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy will get better with time or worse with time?
That's a good question. Gosh. My first answer would probably be, it'll probably be better with time, because right now we are so in the moment of like, what's Disney doing? What's Kathleen Kennedy doing? What are the directors doing? What's all the behind the scenes drama and all that stuff?
Right.
And I think in like 10, 20, 30 years, kids who grew up with these movies, and the audience in general, when we go back, they're going to be so not unaware, or I guess unaware, but they'll also like be so removed from all that drama that they aren't going to be looking at these movies as like things that were tampered with. They're going to be looking at them as, it is what it is, and they're going to be analyzing it for what it is rather than what it could have been or what it should have been. Like there's stuff in the original trilogy, like they didn't know Leia was Luke's sister. They didn't know if Han Solo was going to die in episode 5 or if he was coming back for episode 6, all that kind of stuff. There are lots of things that they didn't know, and there's lots of drama. Like, I think George Lucas kind of ghost directed episode 6. His producer dropped out of episode 6 because I don't think he was happy with the direction of it. There's lots of drama back then, and we don't really pay attention to that. We don't look at the, I don't think any of us look at the Ewoks and be like, oh, that was him selling out, that was this or that, or we kind of aren't in that kind of camp of people who care too much about that, I don't think, because we're obviously much younger. So I think in 10, 15, 20 years, I don't think people are going to look at the drama so much, and they're just going to look at the movies for what they are. That that being said, I also, on the flip side, I think that they aren't as cohesive of movies as the other trilogy, so I'll be interested to see how they age together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be interested to see specifically what people think of Episode 7, because again, as I said, for me, it feels so bogged down by nostalgia and kind of reverence for the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what people, I'd really be interested to speak to like a teenager who discovers the movies in like 20 years and be like, hey, what order did you watch them in? Which one's your favorite? What did you think of this, or that, Episode 7 and all that? So, my personal little guess, I would imagine Episode 7 will not age as well, but that's just me, but we'll see. But I think overall they'll probably age better because again, we're not going to be so bogged down by the drama of everything. What do you guys think?
Brother Fran, I'll let you chime in.
Well, I think that the same thing that happened with the prequels is going to happen with these ones. Like, with time, people tend to appreciate things more because you are not in that time period of drama, of hype, of expectations, and all that stuff. So I imagine that when the prequels came out, people were like, oh my god, it's Star Wars again, and the expectations were extremely high. So when the movies came out and what they are, people were like, oh, this is so bad. But with time, just watching them like 20 years later, with no hype, with no drama, with no one telling you that you have to hate that movie because they hated it, I think that people started to appreciate the prequels more, and I think that the same thing is going to happen with these ones. Like right now, I am not a big fan of them, but I can understand that in 5 to 10 years I may watch them again and say, wow, these were actually pretty good, and I didn't even notice. That can happen. I mean, it happened with Revenge of the Sith. I mean, all the time I see people on Twitter saying that movie is so great and it's a masterpiece and this and that, and I've always thought that it was a great movie. But it shows that with time, when people relax and understand that they are just movies and they don't have to be perfect, and that you're just supposed to enjoy them for 2.5 hours and keep on going with your lives, you tend to appreciate them more. And I think, like I said, it's the same thing that is going to happen with these ones.
Me? Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't know, cause it seems like the case with Superman, it's like everybody's taste is somehow like steered in the direction by the internet. Like one day we want apples, another day we want oranges, another day we want oranges that are lighter, another day we want apples that are lighter. So maybe it will. My hope is that it does, and maybe once episodes 1 through 9 all release on Blu-ray, maybe we can sit back and watch them front to start to finish, and maybe then we'll understand the story a little bit better. But in terms of 5 to 10 years, I don't know, because we'll have a bunch of different Star Wars stuff then. But hopefully it does, but who knows. Moving on, brothers, let's talk about Daisy Ridley as Rey. Brother Fran, I'll start with you, man. Now Daisy Ridley, she's a talented actress. Yeah, she does look good as well. Shout out to her. Now there's been this sort of thing in movies now, and I'm about to go, where it's cool to make these female characters overpowered and Super Saiyan, supersonic, and able to launch a spirit bomb like Goku, even though they're not Goku, and with little to no explanation. They're just all powerful. to clarify, Fran and Jordan, I don't have any problem with female characters or powerful female characters. Some of my favorite characters are female. But we do live in this interesting era of movie studios wanting to sell this idea that, you know, men ain't shit, men, women don't need men, and women can do everything a man can do, and women can do it a whole lot better, a la Captain Marvel. I don't know how you feel about Captain Marvel. With that being said, friend, there was an instant backlash with Rey because she defeated Kylo easily in The Force Awakens, and yeah, she just became all powerful. It was clear that she was in touch with the Force. She was Force sensitive, and as I predicted after the second movie, we later found out that she was in fact related to none other than the ugly bastard himself, Emperor Palpatine. Now, Fran, what's your thought on Daisy Ridley, man, and Rey?
Well, I mean, I think she does great in terms of performance, but here we go with the same, like you just said, like, why someone who's supposed to be nobody, because we learned that she's somebody in the 9th film.
Right.
In the 7th one, we just think that she's an orphan, and that's it. And maybe she's a little bit force sensitive, but she's beating a guy who has trained his entire life with a lightsaber to become a Jedi or later a Sith. How is that possible? Like, what is going on? Why does it take Luke 3 movies to finally understand and be one with the Force, and Rey can do it in 2 hours of the first film? Like, it's those kind of things that you're like, listen, I do not mind powerful women in cinema. I don't care. I've been a fan of, for example, Wonder Woman. I really like it. I like the character. I like everything about it. I like a lot of female-led movies, and that's not the problem. The problem is that when you're trying to shove in everybody's face, like, oh, look, how powerful she is. Yeah. Look, and you're like, all right, yeah, I know she can be powerful. I don't care if she's a woman or a man. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, but look how powerful she is. She doesn't have any training, but look how powerful she is. Mm-hmm. She's never actually tried anything with the Force, but she suddenly is an expert with the Force. Mm-hmm. It's those kind of things, like, make it natural. Don't, because she's a woman, don't make it like you are forced to take her and put her in the spotlight. She's flawless and she can do all these things, no problem. Mm-hmm. Like, let her have a natural progression as everyone has had, because then you get angry nerds that are like, oh, this social justice warrior crap and this and that. And I'm not on that boat. I mean, there's some of that in The Last Jedi, clearly, but not in terms of Rey. Like, if they took the character and made it a natural progression, for example, like Luke had, it would have been great. But having her suddenly know how to fight with a lightsaber, and then being extremely force sensitive and doing all this kind of stuff with the Force, and she's never used the Force, but she can, like, confront Kylo in a mental fight with the Force. Like, what is going on? One guy has been training for 25 years for this, and this girl has never had a lightsaber in her hands, and she suddenly can beat him. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't really connect with me.
I got you. Brother Jordan, man.
I think one thing that I'll just kind of push back on a little bit is that she easily beats Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. In the first one. Mm-hmm. So if you watch the movie, there's a few gags throughout the movie where Han will use Chewie's blaster, and he's like, "Wow, this is some powerful stuff," and it, like, flies a stormtrooper back like 20 feet and stuff. Mm-hmm. That happens a few times. And so before Kylo Ren gets into the fight with Rey, we see Chewie shoot him with that blaster.
Right.
And he's got that wound that he's, like, punching and stuff, and he's trying to, deal with that. So he isn't, like, in his top physical form, I think, in that moment. So I'll just push back on that because he was pretty injured with the blaster. And I think with her connection with the Force, well, it's so interesting to watch it now that we know she's a Palpatine, because if you watch episode 1 in like the prequel trilogy, there's a lot of things that come really easily to Anakin.
Yeah.
And obviously because we know he's the chosen one, that's, you know, the kind of explanation.
Right.
And a similar thing happens with Luke Skywalker, although Luke has a lot more of an arc. He struggles probably the most out of the 3 protagonists. Because, you know, he is an excellent pilot in episode 4. It's just the Force that he doesn't really get, you know. So with Rey, you know, if she had been nobody, it would have been kind of, I think her having a little no struggle might have had some more credence or more relevance, but I think because we know she's a Palpatine and she comes from that powerful, like, the Emperor, the Sith Lord,
right.
I think I don't really have an issue with that, with her accomplishing that much. And I think that's a big part of Force Awakens too. It's about this person who's been on their own, lived this very quiet life, just looking for their family, or waiting for their family, and then something awakens in them. And that thing is the Force, and it's this huge burst of energy and power and this huge connection with everybody, and everything. So I think that for me is enough to explain how she's so, I wouldn't even say she's super well trained in the Force, because, you know, things just kind of happen to her. And let me think. So she does like the Force mind trick in episode 7.
Yeah.
She does some. And I think a lot. Well,
she lifts the rocks.
So scatterbrained.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, sorry. She lifts the rocks in episode 8 too. At the end.
Yeah, lifting the rocks, and I think there's a lot of Force stuff that she and Kylo both do, which is, again, it could be explained through the dyad, the Force bond that they share, which is a rare thing. Palpatine says that he's like a dyad in the Force, unseen for generations. So we get the sense that they make each other stronger because of their connection, which I think is a really interesting thing. And that to me is a good enough explanation for, you know how she's so good at everything. I don't have a problem with it because, you know, Anakin was great at it, and he had an unusual parentage, and so does Rey. She was descended from Palpatine, so I don't have a problem with it. I think the whole conversation of like Rey and like her character and is she a Mary Sue, is she not, and all that stuff. It's really interesting because, you know, I think for so many people, she's this. Star Wars is such a boys-centric kind of fantasy movie. Women, as Princess Leia, yeah, she's a great, strong character, but she's not really like. She's not the core. She is one of the core characters, but she's not the protagonist of the original trilogy. That's Luke. And Padme's a great character in episode 1, but she doesn't really have a whole lot to do in episodes 2 or 3, except kind of be the girlfriend, wife character of Anakin and stuff. And obviously, if you watch the Clone Wars and stuff, they correct this. Ahsoka is like amazing, great character. There's some great Jedi characters like Luminara, Barra Sophie, all the Jedi characters and all the other characters you meet. And even The Mandalorian has some great ones. But again, like, it's usually the guys kind of movie. So I think that's cool to have, you know, a young girl be at the center of it, of this adventure sequel trilogy. I think that's great. And that was what Lucas intended. If you go back to his intentions, what we know of what he planned, I think her name was Kira at the time, but he was always going to have it be about a young, Force-sensitive Jedi girl living up in the desert, or living somewhere in the galaxy. So I think that's, you know, really important, and we shouldn't necessarily, you know, regardless of, like, kind of the identity politics of the time, I think that's kind of important for people to see, especially in the Star Wars movies, where there's not a whole lot of that in the main kind kind of saga in particular. And then on the flip side of that, also, like, she does check some boxes of the kind of, I hesitate to use the word, but the Mary Sue kind of trope, because, you know, I mean, that term comes from fan fiction, and, you know, the Mary Sue character, you know, it was typically an idealized version of the author. You know, it was kind of a wish fulfillment thing. She was always a gorgeous character with an interesting name. She's really talented at a lot of different areas. Has skills that weren't usually established in the previous canon, and she's usually well liked by all the other previous characters. You know, if she meets any character, they're like instantly, you know, in love with this character, and that's the trope. That's what a Mary Sue was in fan fiction. And I know that term gets thrown around a lot by, like, you know, anti-social justice warriors types and, like, those kind of, you know, sweaty man nerd babies and stuff. And so I hesitate to use that word because that it sounds like that, but, like, there are similarities between Rey's characterization and that trope, which I think are interesting. And I don't mean it in a degrading way at all. I just think that there is something interesting going on there. But again, if I haven't said before, I do love Rey. I think Daisy Ridley gives a great performance in these movies.
She does.
And I love her journey so much because it reminds me so much of Korra and Legend of Korra, which I don't know if you guys have seen or anything, or if we've talked about this, but that's just such a great character. And her in episode 9 particularly reminded me of, you know, Korra in book 4 of, you know, the Avatar series. So yeah, I love Rey. I think she's great.
Damn. Damn. Oh man, let me ask you this, brother Jordan, man. And I've seen this thrown around a lot, and I can kind of agree. However, I'm one that always says if it's a new dawn and then it's a new age, that creators, directors should be able to do his or her own thing. That question is, do you think that the OG characters, obviously we're talking Han, Leia, Chewie, do you think they played too much of a backseat in this sequel trilogy?
Good question.
Or took too much of a backseat. Sorry, I said that wrong.
I think, you know, this is kind of answering your question, kind of not. I think one of the flaws with the sequel trilogy is that we weren't the new generation of protagonists of the characters, like Rey, Finn, Poe, Rose. They didn't really get to work together a whole bunch and establish kind of a big connection throughout all 3 movies.
Right.
There's kind of this, again, going back to Avatar, the TV show, there's this word called Team Avatar, where that's kind of like, that was the gang, that was the crew, that was the people who roamed around, they were best friends, they were this extra family, who bonded over the course of, you know, 3-4 seasons or however long it was. And that was also a thing in the original trilogy of Star Wars and stuff. And I felt like that was kind of missing a little bit in the sequels trilogy. I didn't feel like they were, as a unit, like a big tight familial unit, as much as I would have liked to see. So I think part of that is a little bit because in Force Awakens, just because of the way things were set up in Force Awakens, the film focused on Han a whole bunch in Episode 7, it focused on Luke a whole bunch in Episode 8, and Leia was obviously supposed to be the focus of Episode 9. So I think a little bit of that kind of bogged down, it prevented the new generation of characters growing together, because it kind of had to address the original characters. So I think yes and no. I think they're in ways that they don't shine as much. But then in other ways, I think they do get a lot of focus. I think one disappointment is definitely Leia. We learned that in episode 8 and 9 that Leia is a Jedi and stuff. And it's like, JJ, come on, why didn't we see that in episode 7? I would have loved to see that. That would have been super cool if instead of, like, Senator Leia, she was, like, this Jedi ambassador. That would have been awesome to see in episode 7. I would have loved that.
Finn is suddenly Force sensitive.
Yeah. So, like, I think Leia should have had a bigger role, if anything, in episode 7 and 8 to an extent. So that's my long, rambling answer.
I got you. Brother Fran, man, let me talk to you about this, man. And both you and Jordan know my feelings about this. I'm going to try not to rant. Now, John Boyega, he was first cast in the movie. I hadn't seen Attack the Block at the time, but then I later watched it, and I remember really enjoying it. And I remember his character well. And then I was really excited seeing him on the poster with the lightsaber, then seeing The Force Awakens and him, had the lightsaber for the short time that he did, and even squaring off against Kylo. And I think he said something like, "Come and get it then," or some shit like that. And I was like, yes, kick his fucking ass. But that sadly didn't happen, and he got sliced up, and then he met Rose in The Last Jedi. That's for a little later. Now, Finn was a main character. He was billed as a main character, but his arc wasn't as fully developed and kind of took a backseat in a lot of regards that I didn't necessarily agree with. And he was more just this guy who ran around the galaxy yelling, "Where's my white woman named Rey?" And, again, Daisy Ridley is a very attractive young woman. I don't blame him, but, it gives this sort of perception or idea or image that, oh, it's a black guy. If I run this way, he's going to yell after me, so let me pretend to be in danger. Oh, it's a black guy. Let me take this off, and he'll say, "Yeah, where's my white woman?" So, I want to know what your thought is on Finn and John Boyega, Brother Fran, especially after his epic roast on Twitter this past New Year's.
Well, I think that they had a really interesting arc that they could have done. Like in the first one, like rogue stormtroopers and how they are not machines, they are orphans who are taken and trained, and how some of them can rebel against it and all that kind of stuff, and the PTSD of war and all that kind of stuff. That was really interesting in the first one. But then you go to the second one and you introduce this character that doesn't really make anything for the movie, and then you try and break the sexual or the loving tension between Rey and Finn, and then you introduce a new character because of yes, and then Finn stays with that character like 1 hour of the 2 hours of the film, and then you don't go anywhere with that because Finn isn't interested. And then he sees Rey again, and he's like, "Oh, I want that woman." And then in the last one, I am about to die, and I yell out that I've never told you, and then I almost die. And then we later know that he was about to tell her that he's force sensitive. Like, what is that? Are you kidding?
It's safe.
Like, if you watch the 7th and the 8th one, like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, there's obviously on purpose sexual tension between them. There is, and I was like, okay, so in the last one they're going to be together, and that's it. That's why they are wasting time on building this relationship so they can take it somewhere. And they take it nowhere. And then I saw some people saying like, oh, so maybe John Boyega, no? Finn is gay and he's in love with Poe, and I was like, okay, that's fine. That could work too. But he's not gay. I mean, it doesn't show like he's gay. he isn't with Rey. They build a little bit of sexual tension with Poe. They don't go anywhere with it, so I just feel like he's a wasted character. Like he had so much potential, and they just like you just say he's like he has 10 lines in the film, and 8 of them are shouting Rey. It's like, yo, this character had so much depth in him that he could be a really interesting Star Wars character, but instead he's just a guy yelling out the name of a woman that after 3 movies suddenly kisses the guy who's she's trying to kill, and the one guy who's there's always been tension between them, suddenly they're just friends because of yes. And in the middle I'm going to introduce a new character, Rose, so it confuses Finn, but Finn isn't interested in Rose. Like, what is going on? I just feel like he got fucked, like his character got fucked, and he had so much potential that is frustrating.
Yeah. Yep. Brother Brother Jordan, man, what's your thought on John Boyega, the stormtrooper turned thirsty stalker in Star Wars the sequel trilogy, man?
Yeah, okay, so a little thing. I remember seeing Force Awakens, and I know Finn was advertised as, like, the guy with the lightsaber the whole time, but, like, I didn't ever really buy that. I was like, well, obviously it's going to be Daisy Ridley, because she looks like a Skywalker. And so I remember when, like, he got the lightsaber, I'm like, okay, he's gonna get his butt kicked, and then Daisy Ridley's gonna pick up the lightsaber. I feel like that's gonna happen. So I know they build it as, like, John Boyega being the kind of Jedi, but I always remember being like, well, you got this cool stormtrooper deserter, that's a cool character, and then you got this girl with the stick who looks like a Jedi, but she's not a Jedi. She's got to be a Jedi, like, she's dressed like it. Anyways, Finn, he's got a pretty interesting arc in episode. It kind of begins in episode 7 and really kind of happens in episode 8. There's a lot of things that in episode 8 that really should have been covered, I think, anyways, in my opinion, that should have been covered in episode 7. Like, if you look at, like, kind of what happens, episode 7 is the first act of a story, like, of a film. And it really doesn't cover a lot of ground in terms of, like, moving things forward. It's very stuck in, like, this, 3-hour period or whatever, however long it takes place. So I think Finn's arc of, like, deserting the Empire, trying to figure out if he wants to just run away, or does he want to fight, or is he kind of figuring out his identity. I think that's a really interesting arc, and I think that's what his arc is in episode 8, is because, he goes to that I forget the name of the planet. He goes to that gambling planet, and he's there. He's just there for Rey, but he's fascinated by it all, and he sees how war spreads throughout the galaxy, how it's touching everything, and you can't just run away. You have to pick a side. And so that moment when he smashes Captain Phasma's helmet and he's like, I'm rebel scum, or whatever, that's him. He's like, I am a rebel now. From this point on, I'm with the Resistance. This is who I am now. And I think that's a great arc. And he didn't have anything else to do in episode 9. Like, his arc was done. And so, yeah, like you guys said, he just ran around screaming for Rey in episode 9. And part of this, too, when I rewatched the movie, there is, like, little inklings of an arc there. There's little moments where he's like, there's hints to him being force sensitive, and there's hints of, like, whatever happened to Rey in episode 7 is now happening to him. That could have been a really interesting place to take the character, but because of, I'm suspecting, editing, or J.J. Abrams' fascination with the mystery box storytelling technique, the film never elaborates on it. It just kind of hints at it. And it's honestly kind of frustrating, because you're like, wait, I want some clarification, not mysteries, at the conclusion of the story. So, yeah, he doesn't really have a whole lot to do in episode 9, which is kind of unfortunate. And I think John Boyega's his rants or whatever, his thing on New Year's and everything, that was hysterical. That was cracking me up.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I liked his arc in 8 and 7, but he didn't really have a lot to do. Or, I mean, I guess I would have liked to see more of him in episode 9. That would have been a lot better. And I will say about the shipping is, like, I never felt like he and Rey had a, like, strong connection. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a friendship, for sure. They had a total friendship bond. Uh-huh. But the way he and Poe interacted with each other, that definitely read, like, with more chemistry for me. Yeah. And I think Oscar Isaac even said that he played Poe like he was attracted to Finn, which I thought was also interesting. Mm-hmm. That's how they kind of wanted to go with it. And obviously that didn't happen because Disney hates gay people.
Yeah.
Like they like to have like same-sex couples making out in the background and like be like, "Yay, we're so inclusive," but not actually do the work to whatever. Fuck Disney. That's my opinion on that. But anyways, yeah, I thought there was more chemistry between Poe and Finn for sure. And then I thought that, like, if you watch 8, they're really building up the relationship between Rey and Kylo. Not romantically, again, but very a spiritual, strong force connection between the two of them. So, yeah, I feel like the shipping was kind of weird in the sequel trilogy. Like, people were like, there are so many options to choose from, like Finn and Rose, Finn and Poe, Finn and Rey, Rey and Poe. Rey and Poe supposedly kissed in the original episode Draft 9. It's like, what? It's like there's so many like shipping options. It was kind of crazy. And to me, if I'm honest, I really don't care about ships in general. Like that's the least interesting part of like these fandoms and everything. So anyway, yeah, fuck Disney. I guess that's all from that up.
Yeah, man, for sure. 2 more questions, maybe 3 or 4, and then we'll close. Brother Fran, man, I'll start with you. What would improve the Rise of Skywalker for you, man?
Well, maybe like 30 minutes more. Everything feels so rushed.
Yeah.
It feels like the theatrical cut of VBS. Mm-hmm. Like everything, and something happens and there's no time to breathe because something else happens and then something else happens. And I don't know, I saw some of the supposedly leaked script or something like that, and there were some great scenes that I don't know why didn't make it to the final film. Like having all the Jedi physically, like all the actors behind Rey, or things like that. That would have been that would have made the movie so much better. And I don't know. I think that there's some stupid decisions that could be fixed so easily, like not have Rey and Ben kiss at the end. Like just let them, like he transfers his life to her and that's it, and he just sees him die. And that's it. There's no need for a kiss there. There's nothing building up to that, in my opinion. And I don't know. There were some transitions, like for example when Chewbacca supposedly dies, and Ben Solo is like looking for Rey, and then the ship explodes, and then suddenly there's a transition. Like what? What happened there? Like she had Rey right in front of him. Why didn't he go and grab her or whatever he wanted to do? Mm-hmm. Like there were some strange editing there that I think that maybe some scenes were deleted and they would make the film a lot better. It wouldn't be a Justice League kind of different, but I think like a VBS theatrical cut and a VBS Ultimate cut, I think that can be possible.
Damn. Brother Jordan, man, if you had to rank the sequel trilogy right now, how would you rank The Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi, and The Force Awakens?
Gosh, so hard. I think I think Last Jedi for me is slightly above Skywalker, The Rise of Skywalker, but only just. I do enjoy those movies quite a bit. And then Force Awakens is my least favorite of the movies. I think for sure.
Did I?
Gotcha. And brother friend, man, let me ask you this: what character from the sequel trilogy was your favorite?
From the sequel trilogy was my favorite. Probably Ben, but again, like so many strange things happened with him that I think I like it because of the performance by Adam Driver, and that's it basically. Because he has some great moments, and I like that he's redeemed at the end. I didn't see enough to see his redemption. Everything happens like a little bit quick, but I think that out of the three films that are a little bit messy, I think that Ben Solo is like the one that really stands out.
Gotcha. Brother Jordan, man, again, going back to The Last Jedi, I was about to say Jedi, it's one of those films I said has moments where the moments that are really good and stand out are really good. There's one line in the film that is brought up by Master Yoda that goes to something like the greatest teacher failure is. What did you think about Yoda's appearance in The Last Jedi, man?
I loved it. That was a great little kind of. It was the perfect kind of moment, like, you know, when Luke's at his lowest and when Luke is not sure what to do. It's great to. Yoda's a perfect person to have appear. And seeing him as a puppet again was pretty cool. I loved that. You know, I think that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the sequel trilogy, if not the whole Star Wars kind of stuff. Is Yoda talking to Luke at that moment? Yeah, I think I would have loved to see more Force ghosts though in the sequel trilogy, aside from just Yoda.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved to have all the Jedi appear as Force ghosts in Episode 9. That would have been so cool. Yeah. Or even like Darth Vader or Hayden Christensen. Like that would have been so cool. I would have loved that.
Instead of just their voice. But
J.J. Abrams hates the prequels, I think. So that wasn't going to happen. So, yeah.
I got you. Well, brothers, one more question and we'll go. I'll go ahead and say I give The Rise of Skywalker a modest 7. Brother friend, man, what do you rank The Rise of Skywalker on a scale of 1 to 10? On a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm gonna give it a 5 because it's not. I mean, it's not so bad that you need to fail it. You know, technically, it's really good. Cinematography is great. There are some little good moments in there, but overall, I don't feel like I should fail this movie. It isn't that bad, but it's not like a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10. Like, there are so many mistakes and things that I feel that are wrong. That's why I give it a 5. It's like, it's not as bad to be failed, but it is not as good to be any more than a 5.
Okay. Brother Jordan, man, what do you rank The Rise of Skywalker on a scale of 1 to 10?
At least, for me, at least 7 or an 8. At least one of those two. I don't know. I'll give it a thumbs up. A def for sure. Like a big girthy thumbs up.
I got you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the conclusion of this lengthy Star Wars video. The Rise of Skywalker is still playing as Disney wants to get our money and they want your ears, eyes, and brains. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. I will leave a link to Fran and Jordan Ross's Twitter and YouTube channel in the description. And as I always say, do not get triggered. and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.